Joining me now is Ros Baraka, mayor of Newark, and a Democratic candidate for governor of New Jersey. Mayor, it's good to have you on the program. First, just as someone who was there that day, your reaction to the announcement of these charges.
Oh, honestly, I think the Congresswoman will be vindicated. When people see the video from the beginning to the end, you'll see actually what happened in there. This is a lot of theater that's going on. It's been going on for some time. And obviously, when this thing gets to court, I think she'll be completely vindicated. I didn't see her do anything wrong while she was there at all. All I hear was people yelling, get your hands off her, get your hands off her, get your hands off her. I mean, that's what sticks in my head the entire time.
I want to play for you what the president said today defending this. And he had some interesting words. He kept talking about woke, somewhat inexplicably, but I'm going to play it for you and have a look, and I want to get your response. This is what the president said.
Weaponizing with the arrest of a congresswoman, Democratic congresswoman.
Oh, give me a break. Did you see her? She was out of control.
Did you address
those days are over.
Did
the
you
days
tell
of
them
woke. The days of woke. No, I didn't. The days of woke are over. That woman, I have no idea who she is. That woman was out of control. She was shoving federal agents. She was out of control. The days of that crap are over in this country. We're going to have law and order.
Do you understand why the president said the days of woke are over in reference to criminal charges against a sitting member of Congress?
Right. Being woke is not a crime. It's actually the opposite of being asleep. It means being aware and being focused and understanding what's going on around you. I mean, the fact that he used that kind of identifies that this is political. The target of it is political. It's political retribution. It is focusing on people who he thinks disagrees with him, his philosophy, the direction he wants to take the country. It's saying woke and along with criminal charges at the same time really kind of devalues the whole process in the first place. And it really speaks to this kind of authoritarianism that we're experiencing in this country right now.
You were arrested on that day, and I think somewhat inexplicably, they said you were trespassing. And then this sort of turn of events in which those charges against you were dropped right before these charges are announced. I want to read to you what the acting U.S. attorney in New Jersey had to say. After extensive consideration, we have agreed to dismiss Mayor Baraka's misdemeanor charge of trespass for the sake of moving forward. In the spirit of public interest, I've invited the mayor to tour Delaney Hall. The government has nothing to hide at this facility. I will personally accompany the mayor so he can see that firsthand. Do you understand why the charges are dropped, or are you going to get into that facility?
Well, I mean, the charges were baseless, and I'm thankful that we agreed that they should be dropped. Right? We are going to get into the facility, and I would love to have a tour, but it's not about me touring it. I mean, it's not Disney World. We were there basically to get the inspections done. They began to let our inspectors in. We're still in court arguing and about the idea of them needing a certificate of occupancy in order to move forward. That was our basic contention from the beginning, and the fact they weren't letting our inspectors in. And this was a conflict we were having with the GEO Group and not with the government or ICE, because GEO Group owns the property. So our contention was with them. How it turned into all of this is beyond me.
Yeah, just to be clear, the GEO Group is a sort of third-party vendor and contractor, does a lot on the immigration side, and in terms of immigration detention facilities. They own that property. They run that property. It was your contention that they did not have a certificate of occupancy, which folks, I think, who've ever run a business or apartment or house know, you need to have one. So, and your municipal inspectors were not let in, and you're just saying that they're just out of line, like they are out of code with the city of Newark at a basic sort of boring, mundane municipal level.
100%. And they're arguing that they have a certificate of occupancy for almost 20 years ago. We're saying that that's invalid, and they need to go through the process. And it's okay for them to disagree with us, but we have instruments in place when people disagree. It's called the court. Right? Courts make decisions about which way we go forward, who's right and who's wrong. Nobody else has the right to make that decision except a judge. And we were in the process of doing that, in fact. And they made a decision to do what they did. So, and we're still in court, as a matter of fact.
Now, my understanding, is it right, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that you were offered a plea deal by this acting U.S. Attorney Alina Habba on your own charges, and you said, no, I didn't do anything? Is that right?
No, I mean, ultimately, the lawyers discussed what it would mean to drop the charges, and we agreed together to drop those charges, to dismiss them. And we got to an amenable place, and we did it, right? And so I'm glad that they made the decision to do that. I thought the charges were baseless in the first place. And so we get a chance to move on. But unfortunately, we have to now organize around what's going on with the Congresswoman, who is the representative of my district, Congressional District number 10, who is now under these more baseless kind of accusations as well.
Yeah, I want to just read what the Congresswoman said this morning about, she basically says, look, they're trying to get me to plea, to roll over, right? And I didn't do anything wrong. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Well, the Justice Department and Alina Habba wanted me to admit to doing something that I did not do, and I was not going to do that. Once again, I came there to do my job and conduct an oversight visit, and they wanted me to say something differently, and I'm not doing that.
Do you agree with that characterization? I imagine. Do you think it's a good idea that she not plead to something?
Yeah, I don't think she did anything.
Peter.
This is a classic example of the administration, the executive branch, weaponizing government.
That's some of the new criticism. Now, as I told you, with that context in mind, we can look at the underlying incident, which DOJ wants to treat under Trump as some kind of deliberate, premeditated assault, and which many other accounts are skeptical of. The Congresswoman was with other lawmakers, both federal and local, visiting the facility. There was a kind of a scrum or a conflict that broke out. ICE agents moved to make an arrest that they have now completely dropped of the local mayor of Newark. And McIver and others are basically seen in what was an unexpected situation, scuffling or surrounding, and you can use any word you want, you can see it for yourself there, in what was clearly an unexpected, chaotic situation, because the federal officials have a role in overseeing the very place that they're at, and now the federal agents seem to be clashing with them. Now, in a back-and-forth clash, reasonable people, reasonable jurors can debate who's pushing who and who's reacting or who's out of control. There's also footage that was posted on social media that shows McIver asking officers basically stop touching us. Again, if this were a congressional hearing, some of the same federal agents would have the duty of keeping security and protecting the members of Congress. Here it became kind of, as you see, a pretty tense grouping of people, and she's talking there. Now, the other mayor, who was also quoted in the montage I just played for you, matters a lot in this, because there was a case, you may have heard about it, you follow the news, that the feds brought, which is a lesser charge, a very, what lawyers call a ticky-tack or kind of silly charge, of the mayor trespassing. Again, that's unusual. It could happen, right, if he ran into someone's home. But usually when you're the mayor and you go to a government facility in public, you know, with your aides in a formal way, you don't usually get a federal trespassing charge. And that's what the DOJ initially tried against Newark Mayor Ros Baraka. That case fell apart. If that was their big opening gambit against a Democrat, it already completely collapsed, because the DOJ has dropped those charges. And if you're thinking, wow, there's so much going on, how do you keep track? Well, that's new. If it sounds new, it is new. That was just last night. Flimsy charges, as the New York Times reported. Baraka was actually initially allowed past the fence. That's kind of the opposite of trespassing. Then, quote, invited past the gates before he was arrested, seemingly contradicting the accusations that came more from Trump DOJ that he had, quote, barged into the facility without permission. He was then asked to leave multiple times and exited voluntarily. Top Democrats, experienced and serious people saying the line is crossed, we have a problem. The ACLU, nonpartisan, calling this an autocratic and clearly political type of crackdown. And then if you want to talk about the footage where you say things did look a little out of control and not like the ideal government oversight, that's fair. People can criticize all sorts of ways that politicians in both parties exercise their duties. But legal experts do not see this as a traditional or fair-minded prosecution. And we've seen members of both parties do all kinds of things that sometimes get unwieldy in their political politicking and oversight. Even when those actions were terminated in one case, for example, a Republican riot, the Brooks Brothers riot around election debates, or Republican operatives were basically storming the place. You could call that local trespassing, arguing that ballots should be treated differently. That's on the Republican side. Or you had MTG and Matt Gaetz, who showed up very aggressively at a federal prison where they wanted to make a point about January 6th. Again, you could criticize that, and some people said there were aspects of it that were in poor taste or misleading, but you don't typically have, under administrations in both parties previously, arrests made even for these kind of raucous events. In 2020, Democrats said they wanted to do a kind of a sit-in and kneel in parts of the Capitol. And again, people can like or dislike the image on the screen, but we aren't a country that deals with that kind of political activity by rounding up lawmakers and threatening them with jail time. That's why we're witnessing this major departure. There is a high burden of proof when you deal in these kind of situations. The line is crossed. All of the hypotheticals about what will we do as a country if we get to this point under Trump, we're here now. One of the cases already fell apart. That tells you something about the power of evidence, videos, facts. The mayor's case, gone, but replaced quite quickly, quite suspiciously, to be frank, by a DOJ that seems hell-bent on moving forward on these kind of unusual cases against sitting officials.
Again, what Trump has done is made martyrs. Again, this is no insult to the Congresswoman and the mayor, but there are 435 members of the House, 100 members of the Senate, and literally, I don't know, thousands of mayors in the United States. And while I can name a good chunk of those people, I can't name anywhere near half of them, off the top of my head at least. Right? I can't name all 400 members of Congress, 400 or 500 members of Congress. I can't name mayors outside of a few big cities. Right? But now I know who they are. Because Donald Trump made them famous. Because all they were doing was, on the one hand, expressing themselves under the First Amendment. Whether they wanted, they're denying that they were protesting. But in any case, whether it was a protest or a press event or whatnot, they were peacefully assembling. They were undertaking democratic rights, First Amendment rights, in a peaceful assembly. And they were also trying to, as public officials, the members of Congress there, get access to a federal facility so that they could do their role in oversight. There are jurisdictional separations of power. Congress does not, directly run an American prison or a detention center. That is controlled by the executive, right? Laws about how those things run are passed by Congress, but the administration of those entities is federal. But there has to be a right of congressional oversight. And effectively, people were arrested and charged, and some of these people who have been charged, I'm suppose, will eventually be arrested or what have you. Screw the technicalities. Trump is trying to arrest a mayor and a member of Congress for, on the one hand, doing their job to represent their constituents, and two, for their basic First Amendment rights, older even than the Constitution itself, given that some of these rights go back to ancient English law. Donald is a fascist, and he just made two Democrats famous.